Listen, all you New Yorkers. Taxi! Okay, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show on WABC. Thank you so much for joining on this Saturday afternoon. My next guest is Tom Pyle, who is a good friend. We actually share office space in Washington, D.C. He runs the Institute for Energy Research, does amazing work on energy policy, probably one of the foremost authorities on energy policy in the country. So, Tom, thanks so much.
Always a pleasure, Steve. Thanks for having me back.
So, boy, nobody's talking about energy these days, right? You're not busy at all.
No, there's nothing going on.
This is the issue of the day. So let's start. I'm going to ask you a question that I've probably been asked 100 times in the last, I'm sure you've been asked 200 times this question. So people don't understand why it is they're paying higher gas prices when America is a net exporter of oil, right? And so that's, I think, the first time that's happened in decades. So I'm not very good explaining that to people, and they don't get it, and they think we're getting ripped off by the energy. Yeah. So how do you defend them? And why are we paying $4 and $5 a gallon at the gas tank?
Well, the primary reason is because ultimately oil is a global commodity, and when the price goes up globally, then every price rises around the world.
It's like gold.
Yes.
If the price of gold goes up, it goes up everywhere.
Absolutely. Okay. And we are, yes, a net exporter of oil. But the funny thing is, or the tricky thing is that our refiners in the United States are geared for a specific type of crude. It's heavier. They call it heavy sour. And we actually import most of that from Canada, Venezuela, and some in the Middle East.
Wait, we import the oil?
We import a lot of the oil we use for our refineries. Because
well, what happens to the oil that is built here?
We export a lot of that.
Oh, before it's refined.
Yes.
Oh,
we export the crude and the crude derivatives from the Permian Basin.
That doesn't even make any sense. If I may, again, I don't understand this. But why wouldn't we just refine it here? In other words, why are we importing oil from other countries and refining it and exporting the oil we produce here? That doesn't seem
because the simple answer is the refineries have not caught up to the ability to produce. We have a new refinery coming in Texas.
Okay, in Texas.
And they're going to be taking 99% of the crude oil from the Permian Basin.
Wow.
And so that's what needs to happen.
When will that be brought online?
I'm guessing it's probably a 5 or 6 year time horizon.
So some people say that the oil companies are making windfall.
I mean, oil companies are doing what they have to do. The biggest expense in the gallon of gasoline is the cost of crude oil. And when that cost rises, so does the cost of gasoline. It's a direct relationship.
It's like saying, the guy who's selling a cup of water in the desert, look at all the profit he made on that one. So in other words, they were sort of paying them to have the supply in these kind of
exactly.
So they have. And there, by the way, I remember talking to our friend Harold Hamm, who is the inventor, one of the inventors of shale revolution. And I talked to him back in January. He said, if we're shutting down our rigs because the oil price is so low, we can't make money. So it's almost like you have to make the hay when the sun shines.
I call the price of oil sort of like a Goldilocks phenomenon. If the price is too high, then it's not good for consumers. Mm-hmm. It's good for companies. But if the price is too low, it's great for consumers, but terrible for companies. And so you got to find that just right price.
So what do you think that is?
It's generally speaking, it's been higher in the past, but now it's in the $50, $65 range. People can do pretty well on the higher end of that scale.
Are we running out of oil in this country?
Never.
We're not going to drill
we
the
will
last
never run. In the history of revising our oil estimates, they've never been revised downwards.
So I was talking earlier on the show about two of the states that have the most expensive gas, New York and California, and making the point, and I'd like you to tell me if I'm wrong about this, but these are two very energy-rich states. I mean, New York, is it the Utica?
Yes.
And then, of course, California offshore has
and onshore, huge resources.
Yeah. So they are kind of prisoners of their own policy.
100%. It's all policy related. These two states in particular have done terrible damage to their states in terms of affordability because of the policy choices that they've been making. They've banned fracking.
But they're solving the climate change.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, Governor Hochul might say differently these days, right? So,
okay, now let's get to the Strait of Hormuz. How do you see this evolving?
Well, Iran has the largest surface area right by the strait. They have been building this sort of worst case scenario for them for years. Which is if they're attacked, right, we're going to retaliate with this.
So they were ready for this.
They were ready for this?
Yeah.
The other thing is...
So, sorry to interrupt because I don't know a lot about this. I think listeners don't, but are they... is it mines? Is it drones? Is it... What are they doing?
All of the above. It's mines. It's the threat of blowing up a tanker.
So you don't want to bring that tanker in.
Exactly. And the insurance companies have jacked up immediately after this started. They made the insurance so cost prohibitive that it's not worth a lot of people moving that oil out. Now, fortunately, with this tenuous ceasefire, we're starting to see a little bit of movement. Right. The other thing, too, is it's interesting. The rest of we only rely on about 20% of our oil.
Yeah.
The rest of the world, Europe, especially Asia,
China
especially
and India are the two biggest users. Why aren't they doing it?
Exactly. That's Donald Trump's point.
I asked everybody that question. I mean, you would think China would, although I'm told that China has huge amounts of reserves, then therefore
they don't have as much oil as we do. And in fact, oil is probably where they're the weakest in terms of their ability to produce.
So they must be facing, the Chinese are facing, even though they have...
Absolutely. Okay. And you tie that to Venezuela because they got most of their oil from both Venezuela and China. And now they're really
China
sort of
doesn't
in a
really
box.
have that much energy compared to us.
They have huge coal reserves. And obviously the rare earths, they control 80% of the supply chain for that. But that's one of the reasons that they're perfectly happy to mandate EVs there. Because it's a national security issue for them as well, because they don't have the oil to the extent that we. So
looking out past when this crisis is over, we are now we're now the leading producer of oil in the world, which is, I just looked that number up. I think on your website, that was amazing to see. Can we continue to dominate?
100%. Mm-hmm. We have so much oil. Mm-hmm. It's just every time we look, we find it. It's onshore, Texas, New Mexico, New York, if they ever got off the rocker and did something good. Offshore in the Gulf, Alaska, offshore California, offshore the Carolinas. We have oil.
I know that a lot of our listeners are shrieking, saying, "Oh my God, we're going to pollute Santa Barbara, and we're going to, these beautiful oceans. Can we do it safely?" I mean, there have been accidents, right? There was Deepwater Horizon,
sure. Let me give you an answer. Mother Nature pollutes the coastline of Santa Barbara.
A lot of it seeps out.
It's all natural. They call it the tar, there's the tar region.
So sometimes the best thing to do is to pump it out.
100%. Wow.
So it's good for the environment. You listen to this? It's good for the environment to drill. Okay, final thing. I'm talking to Tom Pyle, who is the world's energy expert at Institute for Energy Research. By the way, are you a nonprofit? Can people, how do people find out?
instituteforenergyresearch.org. And there's
I learned so much from anyone who's interested. So 6 months from now, we're in election day. What is your best forecast? What's going to happen? Price?
I get that question asked a lot.
No, it's not.
And if I knew the answer, I'd be really wealthy and I probably wouldn't be running this nonprofit. Right. But the answer is it really depends on what happens in Iran. If that thing gets stabilized and if we see some real actual sort of the market sees that this thing has kind of gone on the rearview mirror, then we're going to see prices come back down. It's going to be a longer horizon, but by November, it just depends on how soon we get to sort of the other side.
As I said, that was the last question, but I want to ask you one more question. I was listening to Scott Bessent, who's the Treasury Secretary, as you know. And he was complaining yesterday in his press conference. He's like, well, the price shot up when we had the crisis. Shouldn't it shoot down when the crisis is over? And you're going to have to defend the oil company.
It's always a lag. It's always a lag.
It wasn't a lag when the price
right. It always shoots up, and it's always a lag because people buy gasoline based on the price of oil that it's going to be, not the price that it is. Okay. And that's just the way that the market works.
And then do you see a future where we don't have to be so dependent on the Middle East?
Well, we are already not, were it not for the refiners having the issue of having, the retrofit their facilities to use our oil. That's going to be a longer time horizon. And that's a problem of permitting. That's the NIMBY problem. People don't want to build things in this country. That's one of the big issues that we have to tackle.
And I want to end on one other note. And that is the question of whether or not there is a future for wind and solar. And I've always, as a free marketeer, I've made the case the worst thing we ever did with wind and solar is throw government money at it. It might have evolved even faster if we just let it alone. But do you see a future for wind and solar, and how would that work?
Absolutely. There's a future for wind and solar. To your point, though, if they had spent all this time working through the market,
right,
as opposed to chasing all that federal largesse, right, then we wouldn't be building windmills and solar panels in places where it doesn't make sense. And that's the big difference.
Tom, thanks so much for joining.
Absolutely.
That's Tom Pyle for Institute for Energy Research. And folks, this is the More Money Show. We'll be back in 2 minutes.